Hi. Today we're going to be talking about what you can do to keep your kids safe if your ex has a drug history and you start to notice that there are some patterns and some things going on that he may have fallen back into old behaviors and that your kids may no longer be safe with him. Now, this video will not cover absolute emergency situations. For example, if your ex shows up for visitation and it's clear that he's under the influence of something, that's going to be well beyond the scope of this video. Here, we're going to be talking about if you start to notice certain things and that your kids may not be safe, what you can do to protect them, how to approach this situation. It may be very delicate. Sometimes people treat people who have a drug history with kid gloves because they've been through so much, and they're going to look at you like you're beating up on your ex and you're trying to just settle a score. No, you want to protect your kids and you want to make sure that everything's okay with them when they're with your ex. So that's the purpose of this video. So I'm just going to be drawing from my 13 years experience as a family lawyer to give you some helpful information, to try to help you to figure out what's going on, try to help you to be able to chart and look at the bigger picture to see, whether your suspicions are reasonable. And if you do find yourself in the worst case scenario, if you find yourself in front of a judge, what you can do to set yourself up for success so you'd be able to get all of the things that you're asking for and be that voice for your kids who don't have a voice. So one of the things that you can do is make sure that you don't involve your kids. Even if your kids are teenagers, 14, 15, 16 years old, and they're old enough to understand what's going on, or even if they approach you and say, Mom, I noticed that Dad was weaving when he was driving, or I found something suspicious in the house where we were visiting, or whatever they may share with you, you just want to say, okay, thank you so much. I'll take it from here. This is something for the adults. Thank you for letting me know. But you definitely don't want to involve your kids. They want to love both parents. They feel conflicted. And even if they're teenagers, they're still under the authority of your ex when they're with him. And so we want to make sure that we're not putting our kids in a situation where they're feeling conflicted and start to feel depressed and confused about what's going on. It's really something for the adults to handle. And so you want to make sure that you're not doing that. One more thing too, if you do find yourself in front of a judge, judges really don't like that when kids are put in the middle. I mean, probably the best thing that you could do is, maybe try to find out from the kids if there's been a, drastic change in the routine of your ex that may, be suspicious, that, puts up your antennas and say, hey, something's going on. And, when we're not talking about, your ex used stale bread when he made the kids sandwich over the weekend, or, he used, expired milk, when he poured the cereal, that's probably not going to get you where you want to be. So you want to make sure that your suspicions are reasonable. And while we're talking about that, one of the important ways that you could try to bounce off someone else to figure out if your suspicions are reasonable or not, if it's something that the court's going to sit up and take notice, is to talk to an attorney in your area. And even if you feel like you can't afford an attorney right now, you can't afford for a consultation, maybe the attorneys in your area, they charge $300 an hour. Most of the time, the good tip is, if you contact your state bar association or your county bar association, or even if you live in a metropolitan area like Dallas, Dallas has a Dallas Bar Association. They will have a referral program, whereas they will have a low-cost referral available to people in their area, and they will give you a referral for an attorney who will charge probably under $75 for a half-hour consultation. So if that's available to you, that's a savings of half of what you would normally pay. So if you're able to do that, please take advantage of that. Know that that's probably available in your area, in your state. So definitely look into that, even if you feel like you can't hire one right now. And when you go for your consultation, I am always absolutely surprised. I can count on one hand how many clients bring a notepad and a pen to the consultation. Because when you go, it's a data dump. You're not going to remember everything. So make sure, number one, you bring a notepad and a pen to write with, because you want to make sure you're maximizing every single minute that you have with that attorney. And not only is the attorney's time is valuable, your time is valuable too. So we want to make sure that you honor your time and the attorney's time. Bring a notepad and pen. Not only that, but before you get there, write down all the questions that you want to ask and put them in order of importance, because just in case you run out of time, you want to make sure that you ask the most important questions first. Okay, so definitely do that, and make sure you leave space in between each question so that you're able to make notes and write down all the important things that the attorney tells you. You want to maximize that consultation. You're spending your valuable time and theirs. So make sure that you do that. And another reason why you're going for a consultation is you want to make sure that your suspicions are reasonable. You want to ask the attorney, I've seen this, and this over the past 2 months. Is that something usually that the court will act upon? Is that something that the court will say, yes, that's enough. That meets the threshold that the courts usually look at to say, yeah, we need to do something to make sure that these kids are safe. So that's another very, very, very important reason to have a consultation with an attorney in your area. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to step out there and get the information that you need from a lawyer that lives near you. Okay, another important thing you can do is chart what you're seeing. You're starting to see bells and whistles going off. Your ex is saying things that don't make sense. They're starting to have that circular thinking, circular patterns of speech, and you think, oh, something's going on. That's not normal. If you start to journal or even chart, I think it's usually better to chart on a calendar. So if you have an online calendar, that's probably the best way. If not, you can have a hard copy of a calendar. Write down what you see and be very specific. The more specific that you are, usually the judges will find that the more credible a witness that you are if you do happen to find yourself in front of a judge. So be very specific as to what you see, what you're noticing are the different changes and are areas of concern for you. So do that and make sure that, if you're not typing it, that someone actually can read it. So write legibly and to chart. And usually, if your ex has visitation every other weekend, it might take 2-3 months or so for you to really get enough information to kind of stand back and look to say, okay, another reasonable person will look at this and say, yeah, there's a reason for you to be concerned, okay? And it's also good because you're already starting something that you can use for evidence, something that's usually very effective before a judge, because then the judge can see over time the patterns and the things that you're concerned about and say, yeah, it's time to spring into action and see what we can do to protect these kids. Okay, another good thing, and some people usually say, why bother to do this, is if you have enough information and you feel like, yeah, now it's time to kind of talk to my ex about this or approach him and see what's going on, I would recommend that you encourage your ex to get help. And people say, why do that? They're always denying X, Y, and Z. You would be shocked how often people would admit to things that are absolutely against their interests, the things that they will say and admit to, because they figure, oh, she doesn't have money to go back to court. I can say what I want. I can do what I want. And a lot of times they're not thinking clearly. They'll spit out anything. And that way, that'll also help you to try to figure out what's going on. And, if you do find yourself in front of a judge, you can say, Judge, he admitted to X, Y, and Z when I asked him what was going on this date. So I would suggest that it's a good idea for you to encourage him to get help, encourage and ask him, I noticed X, Y, and Z, what's going on with you? And you'll be surprised what they will admit to. And it will most likely help you. And you want to make sure that you're helping yourself as much as you can. Okay. So the next thing is the worst case scenario. If you find yourself in front of a judge or have to go in front of the judge, if you're able to hire an attorney, the attorney will obviously help you to prepare and follow the things and make sure you have all the copies that you need before you go into court and, interview any witnesses besides yourself that you may want to bring in. Obviously, usually judges will not allow you to bring your kids in unless, again, they're like, 16, 17 years old, they're almost adults. Otherwise, usually they don't like to involve kids. And so if there are other people in the neighborhood, a neighbor or something like that, or his coworker, something like that, who have noticed, hey, he's been messing up at work, he's been inconsistent in his attendance at work, or his work quality has gone way down drastically, that, may be an option, who knows. But your attorney will. But worst case scenario, if you're not able to hire an attorney, what can you do? Are you just flying blind? Are you totally lost and by yourself? And I would say, no, you're not. There are certain things that you can do. So here are some tips. I want you to make sure you're paying close attention and you have a notepad and pen and write down notes, okay? So if you can't afford an attorney, but you really feel like you need to do something, and really your only option will be going back to court. One thing that you can do is, again, go for that consultation. It's number one. Number two, use the law library. Most of the time, the courthouse where you're going to have your hearing will have a law library, and law librarians are awesome people. And they're not attorneys, so they can't give you legal advice, but they're usually very, very helpful in showing you different forms that you would need to file, and also giving you guidance as to which books that you can look at and read. And a lot of these books are in, very plain language that you as a layperson would be able to understand. It's not just for attorneys, a bunch of legalese. There are books and forms, books that you'd be able to take a look at and say, okay, yeah, I can follow this and I can do that, and this is what it needs to say, and this is the form that it needs to be in, and I can do that. And so anything to help empower you is important. And so use your law library, use your law librarian. They are wonderful people. They have helped me so much, and they will help you too. That's what they're there for. Your county dollars pay for their salaries. Use them. They are wonderful, wonderful, helpful people. Another thing that you can do is, okay, what would you need to try to show the judge that, yes, he should do what you're asking? One of the important things is, again, what I mentioned before, that calendar, the things that you've seen that have set those bells and whistles off in your head to say, yeah, we need to make sure that, yes, judge, we need to spring into action, and you need to make sure that my kids are safe, and this is what I'm asking. Okay, and let me tell you some of the things that you can ask. Number one, you can ask that, judge, can we have my ex go from the hearing today directly to a drug testing center and have them tested? Now, if you're going to ask the judge to do that, make sure that you never tell your ex that you're going to do that, because you don't want them looking on the internet trying to figure out what they can drink to beat a drug test, or you don't want them cutting all the hair off or dyeing their hair and doing anything that may hinder you figuring out what's going on. You want that element of surprise. So never tell your ex you're gonna ask that he go for a drug test right from the courthouse. But be prepared. If you're going to ask for a drug test, a lot of times the judge will say, okay, you have to pay up front for it. And a lot of times you can ask, judge, if it comes back that the test is what we call a dirty test, that he tests is positive, can I be reimbursed for the money that I front for him to be tested? And most of the time, I have seen, in my experience, most of the time the judge will say yes. If you're going to ask for it, you're going to pay for it up front. But if it's a dirty test that comes back, he has usually 30 days to reimburse you. So be prepared financially if you're going to ask for a drug test to pay for it. And it's been my experience, drug tests, depending on where you live, it can be anywhere from, depends on if it's a 5-panel test or a 10-panel test, it can be anywhere from, $100 to $250. So just be prepared to be able to front that money right on the spot for him to be able to get that drug test. Another thing that you can ask for a judge, if the drug test comes back dirty, you can ask for supervised visits with your ex for your kids. So that way, that your ex is not alone with your kids, but your kids can still see your ex, because there's a lot of competing interests that the judge is juggling in front of them. The judge, is juggling the things that you're asking for the judge to do. Then, your ex is saying, nothing's going on, I don't need to be tested. So he's juggling those interests. And then the most important interest is juggling what is in the best interest of the kids. And the best interest, a lot of times the judges will look at, hey, we have to make sure that, the kids are safe, but they're going to miss your ex, and so if we cut it off drastically, what would that do to them? And so all of those things that the judge is juggling in front of them, but the most important thing is 9 times out of 10, the judges don't really care about the adults, to be honest. They're really just interested in what's in the best interest of the kids. And so they want to make sure that they're following along that pathway, along those lines. And so, so you can ask for a supervised visitation. until, say, for example, your ex has 2 clean drug tests. And then you can ask for a stair step. Okay, we go from supervised visits to maybe an all-day visit and not have it be overnight visit for another 3 visits to make sure that everything goes smoothly. If we have 3 visits that are all day that go okay, then we can go back to having the overnight unsupervised visits that they may have had before. So just know that you can ask for stair steps, that you can ask for your ex to go directly from the courthouse to get tested. I've also seen judges say, you know what, you can also ask for, up to 4 random drug tests a year. All you have to do is call or text and say, hey, you need to go for a drug test, and your ex has 24 hours to go and get tested. If you suspect, it's New Year's Eve and I think my ex might have done X, Y, and Z, or it was my ex's birthday yesterday and somebody told me that they saw him doing X, Y, and Z at somebody's house for his birthday, and you think that there might be something going on. You can ask for a random drug test. Again, the judge will probably say, if you're asking for a test, you have to put up front the cost for it. So be prepared for that, that you're going to be paying for it, and if it comes back dirty, then you'll get reimbursed. So know you can ask for that. Know that you can just ask for your ex to go for drug counseling, and that your ex has to pay all the expenses for the drug counseling until the drug counseling program has been completed. You can ask for drug counseling. You can ask for, if in conjunction with the drug counseling, if he has a problem with anger, you can also ask for anger management counseling. Those things you can ask for that you may not even know that you can ask for it. Now, usually anything that you ask for, it's in the judge's total discretion. Most of the time, depends obviously on what state you live in, what jurisdiction that you live in. But most of the time, there's no really set statutes that say, if X, then Y. It's all about the judge's opinion on what's going to be in the best interest of your children. And so you want to make sure, you can put into place those things to monitor your ex if he does come back with a dirty drug test, the counseling, the random tests, the supervised visits, those types of things, to help you set in place the things that are going to keep your kids safe when they're not with you. And so that's the real thing. This is not about getting revenge against your ex. This is not about it being mean-spirited and nasty and trying to figure out a way to, put that knife in the back. It really is all about if you have a reasonable suspicion that something's going on with your ex. These are some of the things that you can do to keep your kids safe and happy and healthy. Because, we don't want anything to be going on with your ex. He's the one who contributed 23 chromosomes to your kids becoming human beings, right? So we have to deal with him. So we want to make sure that he can be the best dad that he can be. So we always want to pray a blessing over them and wish the best for them. But if you do have to spring into action, consider doing some of these things. And if you do go into court, you have that calendar and other things that, other pieces of paper that you think are important, make sure that you have copies. Again, if you have an attorney, they'll do this for you. But make sure if you don't have an attorney that you have copies for everybody. You need a copy for the judge. You need a copy for yourself. You need a copy for the ex, because everything that you give to the judge, you have to give a copy to the ex so that the ex can see what the judge has in front of him or her. And you'll have to give a copy to the court reporter. So that way, if it does go into evidence, that the court reporter will be able to properly label it and put it into evidence to make sure that you set yourself up for success to be able to get all the things that you're asking for. You're going to be asking for the court to be doing certain things, and you want to make sure that you position yourself, if you don't have an attorney, and to be able to walk in with some level of confidence. I know it's scary, but walk in with some level of confidence that you'll be able to put your best foot forward and put the measures in place to keep your kids safe and happy. So I hope you find this video helpful. I've given you my best stuff, and I hope that all works out for the best for you and your ex. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.